This is Reginald Peters, District College Transition Facilitator for Spring Branch ISD. In today's webinar, we're going to discuss creating a new world through effective communication. The goals of today's webinar is to help you communicate more effectively with your students, and then in the same turn help your students become effective communicators as well. There's nothing like being able to communicate in order to effectively express our ideas, to effectively express our concerns, and effectively portray who we are. Part of communication is being able to, for the other party to, or the receiver, to understand exactly what we say. And if the receiver does not understand what we're trying to say and what we're trying to accomplish, then communication has indeed not happened. In so many cases, we see the breakdown of communication with students as they progress and as they move forward, simply because they don't have the right tools to effectively communicate their thoughts and ideas. So in today's webinar, by the end, hopefully you will be armed with the tools to help your students be effective communicators. Let's start off with a YouTube video as we watch the power of words. All too often it is never what you say, but all too often how you say it. And in this short video clip, you're going to see this example.
I wrote the same, but in different words.
Thanks, love.
I love that video because it is so powerful. It is moving, it's actually touching, because when we change our words, we change our worlds. And when we change our worlds, we change not only our lives, but we change the lives of those that are around us. We change lives of people that we don't even know that we changed their lives. And you as teachers, you teachers that are in the classroom, you have this ability to change every student's life just by the things that you say. Every word that you speak impacts a student's life in some way or another. Every word is simply moving. So let's go ahead and look at what we're going to do and what we will do today. We will assist students in learning, speaking, and writing in ways that promote their success. We will increase students' emotional intelligence. We will aid students in keeping all channels open through communication. That's going to be the main things that we're going to accomplish by today's, at the end of today's webinar. Let's look at the communication breakdown. When you look at the percentages of what is revealed through body language, vocal words, and non-vocal words, it's pretty impressive. But if you look, 55% of the communication process is revealed through your body movements. It's revealed through your facial expressions. So think about as you talk to students. Think about as students talk to you. Just by the facial expressions alone, what are you communicating with them? You know, we as teachers have the teacher space, and we have that quite mastered. And students know exactly when to stop talking. They know exactly when they have gone too far, and they know exactly where we stand by having this teacher face that we all have. But that's 55% of the communication process. The 38% is vocal. Okay, that deals with your volume, your pitch, your rhythm, how fast you're speaking, how slowly you're speaking, if you're yelling or if you're screaming or speaking real low at a constant pace. Then the students know that you are maybe angry and that you are too or maybe too angry to raise your voice or whatever the case may be. And then the actual other part of that comes from actually only 7%, which is just your vocal words, so exactly what you say. I think it's important for students to realize that 55% of what they communicate is through their body movements. I don't think that students consider their body movements as being effective communicators. Whenever you go somewhere and you cross your arms, or the way you sit, or the way you stand, it communicates something to you. It's the same thing as the student who sits in the back of the room, who puts his head down. Think about that. What is that student communicating in your eyes? At the same time, does that student know, or does that student realize what he's communicating? And so I think these topics are beneficial, especially as these students transition to post-secondary success, because a student that has his head down in our classroom communicates one thing, and of course we as teachers will correct the student, will ask the student to raise his head up or whatever the case may be. But in post-secondary education, that's not going to happen. The professor is not going to come and ask the student to pay attention or to focus or to not sleep in class. If they sleep, that's their choice. But at the same time, do students realize what that is communicating by doing that? Let's look at this thought-provoking quote. Listening means trying to see the problem the way the speaker sees it, which means not sympathy, which is feeling for him, but empathy, which is feeling with him. I love that quote. So all too often, we don't need to see, okay? I don't want you to feel for me. I want you to feel with me to understand what it is I'm going through. And sometimes I don't know if students are aware of this. I think all too often, I think students want more sympathy, okay? As they tell a story and as they go through things. And the effective thing is for them, they should want us to empathize with us, if anything. But communicating that to them is the key. Being able for them to understand the difference between sympathy and empathy and what those two things communicate will be beneficial. Let's ponder it. I want you to think about these things. Do we listen to students with empathy or sympathy? Why or why not? How do you go about building rapport with your students? It's never about what you say, but about how you say it. Therefore, think about this. How do you help your students communicate the same thing in different words to achieve maximum success? And although I know that you don't teach a speech class, effective communication is something that happens on every level. It's something that every teacher needs to pay close attention to. And if we're going to make our students effective communicators, everything that we do cannot fall on one teacher or one counselor or one subject area alone. And we have to realize that we're all in this together in order to help the students be successful. Let's employ your word. The person you are is a result of the arrangements you make. Oh, that is so powerful. The person you are is a result of the arrangements you make. All too often, students like to make excuses. And students like to come up with things that because of this, then A, because of this, then B, and not take ownership for what they do. But they need to be made aware that their actions is what makes them who they are. It's the same thing with you as a teacher. Who you are is the type of teacher you are is the result of the arrangements that you make inside your classroom. If you are a teacher that cares about your students, then you are a teacher that is viewed by the students as one who cares about them. It is as simple as that. Let's look at the pyramid of powerful speaking. And this pyramid is, I reversed it, because as you look at the pyramid of powerful speaking, it comes in different levels. Okay? And as you can see, the top of the pyramid starts off with obligation. Actually, I'm going to go down. You look at something as an obligation first, and then you look at it as a possibility, then it becomes a preference, then it becomes a passion, and then you plan, and then you promise. So when you look at this, with promising being the big thing, how does this look at the student level? As students go about thinking about education inside your classroom and post-secondary education, are they at the level where right now they can see it as an obligation? Do they see classes as only an obligation? Or maybe is it just a possibility? Or maybe is it a preference? I think all too often we fall into the last three categories when it comes to students in their post-secondary education. I think most of them think of it more as an obligation, which is why we are focused on the T24. And if you only see something as an obligation, then you may meet it and you may not. Some students see college as a possibility, which is great, and that's one step above. But still, a possibility, it's simply that, a possibility. Possibilities can be 50-50. It's possible, but may not necessarily happen. And then you look at preference. Okay, some students prefer to go to college. Just because they prefer to go to college, I mean, I prefer to make $1 million, but I don't see that happening. So same thing with college. Students may prefer it, but it may not happen. Now, passion. Now, passion, when we get to the passion level, this is when it starts to speak to us. Because when you're passionate about something, you're more driven and you're more inclined to complete it. So are students passionate about their education? Or are they passionate about your class? Just like I'm passionate about my job. So therefore, because I'm passionate about my job, I'm going to start to plan things so that that fuels my passion. And then after I plan it, I'm going to promise. I'm going to promise to do the best of what I can do to achieve maximum results because that is my passion. What are students passionate about? What are the students planning to be successful with? And are they promising to get there? I think we as educators, every last one of you play a part in that to help students realize their passion, to help them plan to get there, and then promise to do so. And I keep throwing this around because it's true, but with Naviance, students can find their passions, students can plan, and students can promise themselves. It's one thing to promise you, the teacher. It's one thing to promise the parents, but to promise themselves that they will pursue post-secondary education. Let's look at how communicating creates our world. It says, through communication, we take raw impressions and organize into patterns. We create meaning by finding patterns in our sensations and sharing them through conversation. Being able to, again, I cannot express to you the power to be able to communicate your thoughts, to communicate your ideas, and to communicate your feelings effectively. Students all too often do not know how to do this. How can you help them do this? How can you help foster that communication skills? And I think a lot of that has to do with discussions in class. I think a lot of it has to do with writing assignments. And I taught on the college level, and all too often I heard professors say, well, I'm not grading their grammar, or I'm not grading this because this is not English class, and I teach I teach science. Well, I'm sorry, but since when did we not have to be able to communicate just because it's science? Since when did we not have to use effective grammar in order to communicate in our own world. And so, regardless of what subject you teach, I think it's important for students to be able to have to use correct grammar. Regardless of what subject you teach, I think it's important for students to have to be able to speak correctly, because you know what? That's the world that they live in. The process of creating shared meaning, communication is also in a constant change, and each of us create meaning in a way that is unique. If you think about this, each of us, no matter who we are, we have a unique way of communicating, a unique way of speaking. I know with me, I'm always using analogies and I'm always using examples, and people tell me that I have this unique sense to just break it down and for it to be real. Well, for me, as an effective communicator, because I like to make sure that things that people can see the clear line, and so that it is as simple as 1, 2, 3. I like to break it down and use comparison. I think that especially throughout my teaching career, when I use these students students were greatly appreciative of how I broke things down, because they were able to understand exactly what it is I was trying to tell them. So the question is, how do you break down things for students? How do you communicate with students? And what is your unique communication tactic? As always, as we communicate things, there can always be some type of misunderstanding within communication, which is this interesting, and how sometimes things get misplaced, out of context, or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, I hope that as we're communicating, we're not doing it like they are in this video. Take a look.
Chevy Cruze Eco gets up to 42 miles per gallon.
What? Sam, get your ears cleaned out.
What did he say?
42 wild Italians.
Huh?
It's a cruise for plus-size individuals. It's a commercial, that's all.
I'm pretty
What?
sure
Now,
he said the Chevy Cruze
a
Eco.
commercial for Eco. No, Eco.
It's the Chevy Cruze Eco gets up to 42 miles per gallon.
Who asked you?
Amazingly fuel-efficient Chevy Cruze Eco.
Turn up the volume.
Maybe we need to turn up the volume in our classrooms. If and I know none of you have the problem of communicating, because teachers are very effective communicators. But think about if you had a classroom where, as you're speaking, and every single student thought you said something completely different. Think about where we would all be. At the same time, think about when students speak and how sometimes we don't know exactly what they're saying because of how it is delivered. Here's simply the communication process. You always have the communicator that sends and receives the messages. Each one is going to encode and decode the message. And of course, here's the thing, and then this is why it's important for students to understand why it is to be effective communicators. Every person receives the message they receive it differently. And of course, as they're receiving it differently, there's this noise that takes place that interferes with that process. So if you're already unclear, or you're not speaking clearly, and then you have this outside noise that happens on the senders and the receivers end, then it's going to make that communication process a little bit harder. It's going to make the communication tactic just a little bit more difficult. So I think students need to understand that communication it's an art to communicating. Communicating is not something that you, especially speaking, if you look at some of the college classes, interpersonal speaking, introduction to communications, public speaking, they have all these classes for a reason, and they have it so that you can improve at those different topics. So I think it is beneficial for students to understand that in order to be better at something, they do need to practice it. And in order to help them be better at it, we as teachers need to bring that to the table as well. I think all too often, everyone, including myself, we all like to talk. We don't like to listen, but we like to talk. We want to be seen and we want to be heard. But being quiet and listening is much more effective than running our mouths. And I don't think students don't understand that. You think about the student that is you call them outside and you may need to talk to them or whatever the case, but they don't want to listen. They don't want it. The only thing they're interested in is speaking their mind and telling you what they think or what they know, as opposed to just zipping the lip and listening. So I think students need to be aware that they should choose to listen and employ nonverbal skills. Now, first, just being quiet as you're talking to them or as someone is talking to them. They need to maintain eye contact. Eye contact is and we can look at cultural differences as well, because not all cultures make eye contact, but at the same time, just the general communication process involves maintaining eye contact. I think it's important for students to display openness. They need to send acknowledgments. They need to release distractions and suspend judgments. I think the displaying openness is a big thing. You always need to be open. If you go into something shutting the ideas out and shutting the thoughts out, then you're not going to achieve anything. And then you need to suspend your judgments as well. You cannot be an effective communicator if you're judging what your speaker is delivering. And so students, because they're young, that's what they do. But in order to overcome that, they first need to be aware of that. Now, let's choose to listen verbally. Verbally is just as important as non-verbally, okay? But they need to choose when to speak. Students need to know that there's a right time to open their mouth and there's a right time to keep their mouth shut. They need to make sure their feedback is meaningful. I think all too often students, they love to give feedback, and you may talk, if you have friends, and even when you're talking to your friends or whatever, friends have feedback, but is it always meaningful? It's not necessarily. We do need to allow promotion, because that's just the way life happens. We are emotional human beings, so we do need to allow for that. We also need to be careful with questions and advice. Be very careful with question and advice, because sometimes the questions and advice is not going to be what we want, and at the same time it may throw a damper on things. So you have to consider that as well. But students, if you think about this, when students are, let's say you're having a one-on-one with students and they give you advice, you may ask, well, what can I do to help you in my class? And they go off on some rant or some tangent talking about, oh, well, you're a horrible teacher, etc., etc. They need to be aware that that is not the right thing to do. Again, doing things like that in college may just get them kicked out of the classroom. But if we never address it in our classroom, how will they know that that type of thing is acceptable or not? So when you choose to speak, this is what you need to do. You need to speak up. All too often, we don't speak up. Students need to speak up for what is right. They need to be honest. They need to be open. They need to notice if there's any barriers in the communication process, because sometimes when we're talking to people, there are barriers there, and we need to realize if there are barriers there. If there are some, we're never going to be able to communicate and get our thought process through. And then I think the most important thing that we can take into consideration for both the teacher and the student is the you and I. Replace you with I. It's never about you did this or you did that. It's I feel when this happens, etc., etc., etc. And because you takes it doesn't point the finger. And so many confrontations happen when you point the finger. So get students to realize it's to take that finger pointing away to replace the you with the I. Now let's look at some constructive criticism to this. I think we definitely need to avoid finding fault. I think all too often, especially when we communicate, we like to play the blame game. this person is responsible and or that person is responsible. No, let's not find faults. Let's stick with the issue at hand. Don't laugh. Don't joke. Okay, if I was telling you that I thought you were not doing a great job at what you do and you started laughing, to me that communicates, oh, well, they think that they think this is funny, or they're not taking it serious, or whatever the case is. Think about when you tell a student something in class and how they would respond if they laugh to you as opposed to taking it seriously. They need to be aware of these things. They need these things brought to their attention so that later in life they won't make that same mistake. React with acceptance. I love this. You can disagree and still accept it calmly. Just because someone doesn't agree with you, and again, students are notorious for this. Oh, you don't agree with them, it's the end of the world, they're angry. No, it doesn't have to be that. Let's keep a perspective. Let's look at the positive change and the self-improvement that could happen with this. Let's be open-minded. And when you're open-minded, then change can occur. And then if you are talking, which sometimes students do as well, if you're talking to them and they're only trying to think of the rebuttal, then the process, the communication process has ended. And not only just for students. As I talk about this, this is just not the things for students, but it's for every person out there. But if someone's talking to you and you're only thinking about what you're going to say next, that means you're not even listening to what is being said. You're not even thinking about what they're communicating to you because you're only thinking about what you're going to say to them. Speaking as an educator and as a Facebook user as well, as a social media user, I think we're all social media users at this point in our lives. So the next part of this webinar, we're going to talk about social media because I think it's so important and I think it plays a huge impact on our students and how they communicate through their lives. So the next few slides and the next things are going to deal with Facebook. It's going to deal with texting. I know now I text my mother more than we talk on the phone ever since I got her the texting plan for Christmas. And so now most of our conversation has moved to the texting arena. So if my mother is texting, then we know that the students are definitely texting as the ways to communicate. And as they're texting, we know that they're also on Facebook, which is the other biggest main social media that is out there. With that said, let's look at this social media revolution actually of 2011. So if this was going on in 2011 and it's now 2013, think about how this is significantly different.
Baba yetu yetu liye mbinguni yetu yetu, amina.
I thought that was really interesting because we are indeed a social media revolution, and Facebook has indeed taken over the world as far as communicating. It's almost your one-stop shop for communication. Students these days don't even use emails. They use more things such as, if you look at Facebook as a portal, that is what they use, and that is how they are communicating. Let's look at another Facebook. Let's look at the world. We looked at the world with Facebook. Now let's look at the world without Facebook and how that will look. Think about your life and where you were before Facebook and MySpace and before social media, whatever the case is. You know, think about where the students were before Facebook and social media and things like that. If you have Facebook, think about how you communicate with your families and friends and keep in contact with them and former classmates that you never even really wanted to ever hear from again. Think about that, because the Facebook phase is in our lives, and honestly I don't know if it is going away or not. And so because it is there, and even you have your social Facebooks, you have Facebook that you connect only with professionals and whatnot. Even as you have that, there's still etiquette. There's still things that you should post. There's still things that you shouldn't post on those websites. And I don't think students know the things that they should and should not do. We would think that students would know these things, but let's look at it. They're kids. They're kids. They don't understand, and especially if no one is telling them what it is to post certain pictures on Facebook, or they don't know what things should be done if they're posting things such as if they're having, or if they're drinking underage, or whatever the case is. And I think in order for us to help them, we need to address those things. They need to know the image that it appears, and they need to know what those type of things stand for. So as we talk about the etiquette of social networking, I'm going to show you this video because I think this video shows how social networking looks at a real life standpoint. I think because we hide behind the computer on Facebook or hide behind the computer on Instagram and twit, or what is it called? Twittering, whatever the case is, we say things that we may, or do things that we shouldn't do in real life. And I think this video right here puts it all into perspective. So let's look at some social network etiquette.
Poor little emo child, suffering from quite possibly the worst fate in the online world, unfriended in a social network. It started as being bumped from a top 8 friend ranking, and then, as fast as a newspaper taxi, dropped as a friend altogether. But hold your pity. He's not the victim of a cruel, cruel online world, but rather the victim of poor social networking etiquette.
Just because the internet renders you virtually anonymous does not mean social customs should be ignored. Let's take our friends' social networking behavior and put it in the outside world to see it in perspective. Before spontaneously requesting friends, it's best to send them a message first introducing yourself and brief topics of interest that you may share.
You want to be my friend?
It's in bad form to request a friendship from someone who's already declined. If they didn't want to be your friend the first time, it's safe to say your persistence will not pay off. Respect their decision and save some face.
Hey. Can I sit down?
Sure.
What do you need?
Toxic Junkie.
I'm reading that too. Do you want to be friends?
Sure.
Okay. Let's read together.
You know, nobody really likes you. You're an idiot. And your boyfriend's cheating on you. No one believes that you have 500 friends. More like 500 people that feel sorry for you.
If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. This applies to the online world as well.
You look amazing, girl. I'm losing my mind.
I'm in a relationship.
Hey, kitty cat.
If a person's profile says they're in a relationship, assume that it's the truth, and avoid sending comments about how good you think they look or what you would like to do with them. In the outside world, stalking implies some psychological imbalance. In social networks, it's the norm. If you are compelled to secretly keep tabs on friends, lovers, co-workers, or complete strangers, do so with discretion and respectable intentions.
OMG, I'm bored. New pics, please. Everybody comment on my hot pics.
Posting bulletins can be useful if you want to share news or promote an important event. But be courteous to your friends and limit insignificant comments.
I just ate soup.
Do you like fun flings or long-term relationships? What's the longest relationship you've ever been in? Have you ever been in love? Name the last 4 people that you've kissed.
I'm unfriending you.
Proper.
I like because that video gives us a real life snapshot of what Facebook or MySpace or whatever social media outlet you use, how it looks in real life. And I think if students saw that, they would understand the things that they do. Even in my life, I have friends, people that I went to high school with, they'll request me. I'll delete the request, they'll request me, I'll delete the request, and it becomes a whole game until I finally just stop even deleting the request. I just let it sit in there. And my thinking is, I didn't like you in high school, so why do I want to talk to you as an adult? Sometimes I wish they could see this message so they would stop friending me. I think students need to realize that it's unhealthy behavior. I think they need to realize that it's not something that you should do, and if they do it, they should stop. I also think it's interesting that at the end, she says, I'm unfriending you. A lot of times on Facebook, we'll go through and delete people as a metaphor for unfriending them or, deleting them out of our lives. But, at the same time, it's just Facebook. As we look at social media and communication, I think we should follow these few things as far as proceeding ahead. I think with these cautions, we can master the social network. I think we should only post what you want to be made public and permanent. I think you should act as if what you're posting on Facebook will forever be there. Think about it if you want your mom, your dad, your grandmother, your granddad, your aunts, your uncles, your kids, your employees, your boss to see it. Kids need to know that. Students need to be aware because some of the things that they post are not things that shine them in the most positive light. Remind them to be honest, be who they say they are. Don't create fake profiles. Don't create profiles that make other people think that they're somebody else. They need to friend people with care. They don't need to accept every person that requests them as a friend. They don't need to follow every person, nor do they need to expect or allow everyone to follow them. They need to be selective. Just like we are in our friendships of life, as selective as we are, our students need to be or to maintain that same selective quality when choosing friends. If they decide, because it is social media and people do meet people online, if they do, they need to be very careful, extremely careful, because people can mislead you. That's the way the world is. That's the way it works. However, if something happens where they do meet a friend or whatnot, then encourage them, tell them that they need to do it at a restaurant, somewhere public. You never get in a car with the person, you never leave with the person, and to bring a friend with them. Okay, those are crucial things. The next thing to remember is a little bit of Facebook netiquette, and this is basically, this is what's acceptable. It's just like etiquette, but it's what's acceptable for using technology. And here's some few things that you can think of. Remember that your messages are missing emotions, and when you communicate online, the people who receive your email will miss out on your voice inflection and nonverbal cues that are present in face-to-face communication. So without these cues, words can be easily misinterpreted. So reread your messages before sending it to be sure you have clarified what you want to say and clearly how you feel. I think you should also avoid typing messages and emails in all uppercase letters, because this is the online equivalent to shouting. You don't want to use tons of exclamation marks, question marks, or whatever you need to say. I think you also need to proofread your messages for spelling and grammar, just as you would a printed message. Okay, you need to spell check. You need to read it out loud so that your communication process is is done well. Speaking of communication process, I'll tell you a short story of as I was getting ready to go to the University of Texas at Arlington. I was sending the advisor there an email, and thank goodness I proofread my email, because as I was typing, I said something. My message was like, I am attaching the assigned sheet. However, as I actually typed it, sheet was not the word that was in the email. I will not tell you what the words are, but hopefully you can imagine what it was. Let's just say that it would not have been pretty. And then think about this. You can use social network to learn. There is the biggest upside to social network, because you can choose topics and interests that relate to you, and you can search for them on the web. You can use the RSS reader, such as Google Reader or NetNewsWire, to get updates lists of articles on the websites you like to follow. You can search Twitter, Facebook, and other networks to see whether you can connect with authors of those articles. And you can also use email to connect with direct people. You can use video conferences websites to converse in real time with people across the world. That's a big thing. You can pay special attention to blogs and join the discussions by commenting on the postings and getting active in that. So there's a huge way to learn within social media. And that's going to bring us to our next video as we look at texting. Again, we've talked about Facebook. Now I think it's important to talk about texting. As I pointed out earlier, my mother's always texting, and we're always texting because we're in a texting environment. However, we need to pay attention to how we text, because it is not a matter of necessarily what we say, but nowadays how we say it and how we do it. Let's look at this video.
Oh, yeah, just 1 sec, I'm sending a text. So it seems to me like people are going overboard with their cell phones these days. Like, people always have their phones in their hands, and it's usually at inappropriate times, and it seems to be messing up society. Like, think about it. How many times have you been walking down the street, texting away at someone, and you bump into another person? More than once. Now, there are a lot of things that people are doing that they shouldn't be doing with their phones these days, but I came up with a list of what I feel are the most important things that people need to stop doing with their phones, in case it wasn't obvious enough already. Let's call it texting etiquette. When you're with another person, pay attention to that person and not your phone. Never compose a text message when you're in face-to-face conversation with another person. If you do that, it's going to make the other person feel like your phone is more important than they are, which could lead to an undesired outcome.
So I want to sweep shower and play 5 cards off, and it's got so good, but water pressure will give you like 10 times better. Are you listening? Matt! 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 Matt?
Wow, that escalated quickly. Don't freak out if you send someone a text message and they don't reply to you right away. That person could have their cell phone off or be busy, and sending them multiple text messages to get their attention is not a good idea. You could really annoy them, or worse.
Oh man, this movie's supposed to be amazing. I'm turning off my phone for this one.
Oh man, that was such a good movie. Should we rent another?
Yeah man, for sure. Let me just turn my phone on and see if I got any text messages.
Looks like someone needs a new smartphone. Be very careful of your tone when composing a text message. It's extremely difficult for the person receiving the text to determine what tone you intended when you composed it, so it's best to avoid things like sarcasm.
Sarah, I have a confession. I sort of kissed another girl. Do you forgive me?
What? Oh yeah, it's no problem at all. In fact, I'm so glad you did. What? Oh yeah, it's no problem at all. In fact, I'm so glad you did.
Really? Awesome. Thanks for being okay with it.
See what happens? Don't text while driving. Believe me, the last thing you want to do is get into an accident all because you wanted to send someone a winky face. It's important to remember that text messages are informal, so keep the message casual. Text messaging shouldn't be used to dump your girlfriend or boyfriend or send important news. The casual nature of a text message diminishes the strength and meaning of the message.
Yeah, man, I met this chick the other night. Like, we've been seeing each other, but man, I don't know. It doesn't even matter, man. I get so many chicks.
Dude, how do you get all these girls?
Man, ain't no thing but a chicken wang. You know what? I'll break up with her right now. Hey, girl, I'm bored with you. Peace. Yeah.
What?
Okay, well, maybe the importance doesn't always get diminished through a text. So that's it. Some of you really need to chill out with your phone because you probably do all the things I just mentioned. But believe me, I get it. There's a billion apps in the App Store. It's tempting as hell. But just remember, you control your phone, not the other way around. That's it. That's all I have. Bye.
Folks, hopefully by today's webinar, you will be able to help your students be effective communicators, not only in your classroom, but outside the classroom via social media and texting. So let's go ahead and look at a dimmer check for today. Think about this. What percentage of your time is spent communicating nonverbally? One strategy for effective communication is to separate the roles of sending and receiving. Briefly explain how to do this. In this webinar, we discuss techniques for nonverbal and verbal listening, briefly explain the difference between these two approaches to listening, and give one example of each approach. And then I want you to think about this because we did watch a lot of YouTube videos. So, pick 3 and think about 3 things you found out, 2 interesting things, and 1 question you still have. And think about that for each of the 3 videos. Again, this is Reginald Peters, College Transition Facilitator for Spring Branch ISD. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at reginald.peters@springbranch.isd. Have a good one, and until next time.